feel like this one is such an important one. Unfortunately, I feel like we're probably not going to have as many people today because I know it's also a holiday. So there's that. But I feel like today's an important one. So whether you are here live or catching the replay, I know this isn't always like the sexy version of like how to scale next year or whatever, but this is like truly an important one. So hopefully that will be supportive. As always, we do the giveaway. I'm trying to remember what today's giveaway is. I'm just going to look very quickly. It is any of my products. So if you are here, if you comment, hi, question, whatever, you're entered to win and pick any one of my products that you want, just as a thank you for being here, because we so appreciate you spending time with me. And yeah, just like giving me your time. It's such an amazing thing to truly be able to do that. So thank you. Hey, Michelle, happy Monday. Okay, so today on the topic of over delivery versus over responsibility, I feel like this is one of the things that gets so confused in our space so often. Hi, Nora. Welcome. This gets confused in our space so often. I think that many of us find it very difficult to know what the line there is. I think that many of us find it very difficult to hold ourselves to a boundary. I think it's really easy to call everything over delivery when really it's bordering on over responsibility. And I think if you are at all feeling like stressed or heaviness or weight around your client delivery, this is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest part of that. So that's really what I want to dive into today is what's the difference between over responsibility and over delivery? How do you find that line? How do you create discernment there? And how do you actually make it feel good for you and good for your clients? Because the truth is, like, over responsibility, yes, it's heavy for you, but it also is not helpful for your clients. No matter how much they might like want you to take that in that moment, it never helps you, but it certainly never helps your clients. And so I feel like that's really important to say as well. Because I think that we miss that a lot. Like, I think that we're like, oh no, it helps them, but it's like, I'm, having to set a boundary for me. No, over responsibility does not help your clients either. So let's get into it. I feel like there's like both a very simple and very nuanced explanation to this. So we'll start with the simple version. And obviously, if you guys have questions on this, feel free to let me know. Happy to like dive in whatever way y'all want to take this too. But the simple version in my brain is over delivery looks like I want to give that. I want to pour more into you. It feels good to me to deliver in this way. Where over responsibility looks like I have to do this because you won't get X if I don't. Like, you won't be able to get results if I don't. You won't be able to move forward if I don't. It's like a have to, right? Where over delivery is like a get to. It's like, I am full and I enjoy pouring into you. Where over responsibility is like, you need this from me. I have to do this. This is required for you to get results, right? They're very, very different things, even though they could look exactly the same. So let me give you an example. So I always tell my clients, I'll respond to you within 24 hours during the week. Obviously longer on weekends, but I'll always respond to you within 24 hours. Cool. I over deliver on that constantly. I respond in so much less time than that, the vast majority of the time. Why? Because it feels so good to me to do that. I love being in touch with my clients. I love checking in. I love being present for them. I feel like we're in partnership. I love to pour into them in that way. That is over delivery. Over responsibility would be like if I did the exact same action, but I said my why was, well, because they're going to get so much better results if I do that. And if they wait too long to hear from me on a decision, they might not make the right decision in business and it could really impact their results. That's over responsibility. They're allowed to make whatever fucking decision they want to make in their own business, right? They're allowed to make whatever moves they need to make before I respond to them. That is so important to make a note of because ultimately, one is like, this feels really good to me. And one is like, I have to do this or they're not okay. I have to do this or they're not okay, even if it looks exactly the same, has so much more weight, has so much more pressure, has so much more um, resentment eventually tied to it. It's like, I owe them this. I know I don't owe my clients responding quicker than 24 hours, but almost every single day, I enjoy doing that. I like giving that. It feels good to me to be that connected and to show up like that. That is like the crux of the difference is like, am I doing this because I have to, or am I doing this because I want to? Right? You can want to over deliver. That can feel fun, enlivening, good, exciting. It can feel so great to support in that way, et cetera, right? Have to is like, yeah, even though my contract says 24 hours, oh my God, I could never go that long because all of these bad things would happen. Nobody wants that, right? Hi, Lacey. Hey, Nikki. You talk about returning clients to their power. How might a conversation go if you need to return someone to their responsibility? So let's just like, I'll just use the same exact example. Like, say a client was saying to me, like, hey, you took 12 hours to respond to me and I really needed an answer absolutely immediately. And so I made the wrong decision because of it, dot, dot, dot. Responsibility would be like, hey, our agreement is I'll always respond in 24 hours. I trust you so implicitly as a CEO of your business, where even if you made a decision, that's not exactly what I would advise. I feel like we can work through it. I'm here to support you in it. And I want you to trust you as the CEO of your business. You can't put me in that role because that's going to feel terrible for you. And you're going to lose that trust in yourself along the way. Can we talk about why it feels like you made the wrong decision and why you didn't trust yourself in that moment because you were waiting on my response or whatever? Like, I would be super vocal about that. Now, don't get me wrong. Occasionally there's a thing where a client and I have like, I'm just going to make something up that I could think of, but it's like, we have a call, we talk about like, oh, this is happening in the middle of your launch. You need to change this, this, and this today. And maybe they come back to me and say, hey, I changed what we talked about. If you can look at this today, that would be really helpful. Fucking fine. That makes so much sense. We're like in a dialogue, right? But if it's outside of something like that, where it's like, I don't feel like I can make moves in my business without you. And so I need you to be on call. I need you to be answering all the time. Like, we have switched roles. Like, somehow you have not stepped into the CEO role. Somehow I have let myself take it on. We need to reset that and change that. Because again, that's not over delivering. That's like an entire switch of roles. Like, if you're a business coach, obviously it might be totally different as something else. But if you feel like you are the CEO of all your clients' businesses, something is wrong. Like, you are far, far, far into over responsibility territory. And no matter how you want to name that, that is not over delivery at all. That is, I don't think they'll get this result if I don't take on the CEO role. And what's so, so, so bad about that is not only is it bad for you, but it's actually reinforcing for them subconsciously and energetically that you also don't trust them as the CEO. It is so bad for everyone involved, right? Nobody wants that message reinforced all the time of like, you're right, I really should have made that decision. Ugh. Or like, oh my God, just bring that to me before you ever do anything, right? So not the vibe. And again, so reinforces like you could get it wrong. You shouldn't trust yourself. Someone else knows better than you. Like, that's the exact thing we're trying to get away from in our space, right? And Nikki said difference between coach and consultant. Totally. And also difference even between consultant and CEO. I feel like so many people don't want to take that ownership and CEO role in your business. Like, you can be a CEO and hire a consultant and the buck still stops with you, right? You still have to treat it like that. You still have to make decisions like that. And so I think it's so important to know that. Yeah, just like in parenting. Oh my God, yeah. For real though. But I feel like what a lot of us like caring, empathetic humans do is we'll go, oh no, that's just over delivery, right? Oh, I just show up for them a lot because I like to over deliver. Oh, I just like actually log into their whole business and fix all of these things and do da 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 because I really love to over deliver for my clients. No, ma'am. That is not what's happening there. Right. And I feel like it's so easy to fall into that trap. I know I did that at the beginning of my business and in a few different scenarios that I can think of explicitly where I absolutely would have told you at the time, oh, I just like to over deliver. No. What I was doing was taking complete over responsibility. And guess what happened in every fucking one of those cases? As soon as I did that, the client just tried to give me more and more because that is the dynamic we were both participating in and setting up. As soon as I was like, oh, you know what? I'm actually really good at that. I can just log in and help you fix da 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 da. They're like, oh, can you also do this? And what about this? And maybe I shouldn't make a single fucking decision without that. And maybe I shouldn't do any of this. Maybe Lacey should be doing all of this, right? Like it's so quick to set that up. Like it happens like that. And you really have to pay attention to it. And again, most of us that like love our clients and really want to serve and really want to deliver will do that thing where we just name it over delivery. And it's so painful and so harmful. And it really is harmful to our clients too. Because if you are ultimately not giving them full confidence, like if I don't believe, and I truly mean this, if I don't believe that my clients can't go 24 hours without hearing from me, something is completely fucking wrong. Like we need to have a giant sit down. If they're like, I truly cannot run my business for 24 hours without hearing from you, like that is red flag central. And I don't mean like they're a red flag, but I mean like that means like we have to do a big reset. Why don't you trust yourself in this way? What do you feel like you're not able to step into? What do you feel like I'm bringing that you don't have? Like that is returning them to their power, right? Again, do I generally take 24 hours? Almost never, to be honest with you. But I would tell you the absolute vast majority of my clients wouldn't fucking care if I did because they know that they're the CEO, because they know that it's their role, because they know if like there's nothing that couldn't wait. Right. And so it's also an energy of do they feel like their business is running them or are they running it? Because if if you're running it, you're like, oh yeah, I need to respond to that person, but it can wait if Lacey's going to get back to me in 10 hours or whatever. If they're like, oh my God, this person needs me to respond, I absolutely can't wait. And da da da. And so Lacey has to respond to me and da da da. It's like this whole anxious energy. That is over responsibility again. That's like them feeling over responsible to someone else that probably does not demand it, or the situation doesn't demand it rather. And then they're passing that over responsibility to you as well. And it becomes this whole negative cycle, right? Of like, they feel like they're so on the hook for everyone else and over responsibility for everyone else that's asking them for things. And so then that brings it back to you and so on. So it doesn't matter how quick or how long you take, your response time might be 48, mine's 24. That's not like there's no right or wrong here. I'm just using that as an example. But the thing there is, do you feel like if you don't follow that, it's because you want to, because you feel full, because you're pouring over, because you have time on your calendar twice a day where you respond to clients and that feels good? Or is it because you feel like you have to? And that's always what it's going to come back to. I would say the work is if I feel like I have to, why do I feel like I have to? Why do I feel like they can't do this without me? Why do I feel like it all has to be on me? And so much of that is internal, right? And if it's truly not, if it's truly like this client does not seem to be able to do this without me, they truly are very, very stuck. They do not seem to be able to execute on that, then that's what all your sessions should be around, right? It shouldn't be like band-aid it by being there to fix it for them. It should be like, let's have these hard conversations. Let's talk about why they really cannot do this. Because if we don't go there, if we don't truly have those conversations, like we are not serving our clients. Like that is my opinion. I really believe that so many people couch it as over delivery, and really they're not serving their clients at the level they could be or getting the results for their clients and or helping their clients to get the results. I shouldn't say it like that since we're talking about over responsibility, helping their clients to get the results that they could be precisely because of that, because they're not having the really hard conversation. They're like, Band-Aid fix, I'll just answer them more quickly. Band-Aid fix, I'll just be there for X, 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 right? No, you don't want to band-aid that shit because ultimately that's where their results lie. Like if they consistently feel like they can't step up as a CEO, you know how their business is going to grow? Changing that. You know how their business is going to grow? Focusing on that, shining a spotlight on that, really being like, this is your thing, right? They may resist that. Don't get me wrong. right? I'm not saying that always goes perfect, but like that's the fucking work, you know? Lacey said, I love responding to clients in our chat, but I also sometimes don't give answers. I'll ask them more cues to let them work on it. Absolutely. Hey, Christina, so good. I love the differentiation of the why. For me, the weekends is the struggle, and this gives me a good perspective on it. Such a good shift. So good. I'm so glad that was helpful. Yeah, I mean, I think that's so true. Like, I go back and forth. Like, sometimes I respond on weekends and sometimes I don't. And again, it's because it's based on over delivery. Like, it depends on how it feels to me, right? Like, yesterday I was traveling and then I was with Bennett. Like, I didn't respond yesterday. The previous Sunday, I think I like didn't really do anything. I mean, it was obviously with my son, but like we didn't have plans or anything. I think I like absolutely answered a few messages on nap time. Like it's, you don't have to feel boxed into any one way because you have these set boundaries and because you have these agreements. If you go over them, it's because you've decided it feels good to over deliver in that moment. If you hold to them, it's because that's also what feels good to you and you're allowed to like have that balance. And I feel like almost all of our clients appreciate seeing that balance in us too. And again, if they don't, it's like, okay, well, then this is the focus. Why can't you have that balance? Why do you need my response on a Sunday? You know, like that's the work. My contract says no weekends, but sometimes I work Sunday afternoon, so I will respond. Yeah, Lacey, see what I love that. And what I think is so important about that is like, I feel like when we talk about stuff like this, sometimes we can pendulum the other way then. And we're like, okay, well, then I pretty much always have to like not respond on weekends, or I always have to give 24 hours or whatever. And it's not that. It's like you truly get to decide. Over delivery is like a gift to your client and it's the way you can show up. And so I'm sure sometimes when you're responding on Sunday afternoons, like that gets to be that. And also, if you don't want to, some Sundays, that's okay too. And I feel like we often don't give ourselves that permission as business owners to like find the in between where it's like, most of the time I do, sometimes I don't, or like sometimes it feels good to overflow, pour into over delivery. Sometimes it does not. Like there's always like an interesting balance to strike there. But I think so much of it comes back to like being able to say like what feels good to us and putting that as something important, something that matters in the dynamic. Because I think that that's also it is like so many of us, especially women, are conditioned that like what we need or how we feel doesn't fucking matter. Don't even get me started. But like that is so strong in our like societal conditioning in a way. So to go, oh, I feel good responding on this Sunday, I don't feel good responding on this Sunday is not in a lot of our makeup or our like conditioning at all. So it's like work to do that, to be like, oh, how does it feel today? Do I want to? Does that feel good? Versus like, I must. And I don't think that's easy work, but it's helpful again because it's not the band-aid. The band-aid is like, well, I just always respond on Sundays because fine, it's easier to like that's band-aid shit. Just like I'll log into my client's thing and fix XYZ thing because whatever, it's just easier than band-aid. Versus solution. Like, why does that client feel like she doesn't know how to do that or can't resource, like her team to do that or whatever? That's the real work. Same with us. Like, why don't I feel like I can tell what I want on a weekend? Okay, cool. Like, how do we get more into that? Christina said, I love that permission. Last weekend, I answered questions. Contract says no weekends, but this weekend, I just needed to unplug and I felt guilt over that. But recognizing that the time of unplugging has allowed me to serve so much more and better this morning than if I responded on the weekend out of obligation. So helpful. Totally. And I think it's like letting go of the guilt where it's like, the baseline is that you don't. So if you did, that was a gift. It's right. It's not like, and if you don't, that's a bad thing. It's like I did, and that was like generosity. That was like pouring. And when I don't, that's just baseline. There's like nothing wrong with that. And I think like obviously again, conditioning, all of that, we have to let go of the guilt of like, I don't owe anyone that. I've never promised that. Just because I did it once doesn't mean I always have to do it again. I think that we get really stuck in those rigid roles sometimes in business of like, if I did this once, it means I must always. And that is also not true, like if I made my husband coffee some mornings, it doesn't mean now every morning, no matter what I have to, or I'm bad, like I just think it's so interesting how our brains get in that. I know mine does sometimes too, because I'm like a creature of habit sometimes too. So if like, it's like almost like, well, I'm just in the habit of this, so it's what I do. And I often have to stop and be like, what do you want to do? Like, what makes sense for you? What feels good here? Um, and really check in with that. Like, I know I'm always going to deliver on what I promise, but beyond that, like, I get to decide, I get to feel into it. Um, and also, I think it's so seasonal too. I think that's important to say, like, seasonal as in like what season you're in. Like, I definitely probably over delivered so much less when I was in the season of like, I had a, very small child. I mean, I guess I still have a small child, but like he's 2.5 now. It feels different. When I had like a newborn and wasn't sleeping, like my over delivery capacity there, I probably rarely responded on weekends. And I don't even remember. It was a blur. Right. But like where now, my capacity is greater. It's easier to over deliver, it's easier to pour. And again, it's okay for those to change in different seasons of life and business too. I feel like that permission for it to change is everything. Nikki said, crazy how creating and sticking to your boundaries can actually be so freeing. Oh my God, totally. And I think it frees other people too, right? Like, I know from my clients, or even as a client, they don't want to think about me responding on a like whatever within 2 hours and be like, oh man, Lacey probably like feels like she has to do this, or I'm like not going to be able to get on with my day, or she's feeling so much pressure that like my message is sitting in there. Like, they don't want that energy. You know what I mean? If I was a client, I certainly don't want that energy, right? Like, but I definitely want them to have the energy of like, oh, wow, she responded really quickly. Like, I love that she's like feeling overflowing that way, or like loves pouring in that way. Not that they have to think about how I feel in every scenario, but you get what I mean. Like, I do think there's like a way in which we want the person that is supporting us and responding to us to feel like they can, and like it's from a good place. So, like Christina was saying, taking that downtime and then coming in from like overflow and good energy and rest is so much better for the client. And they're going to receive that, I think, in such a different way. So I feel like that's also helpful to note too, is like, it's so permission giving and freeing to create and stick to your boundaries. And it also feels good to everyone around you because they don't feel like they're like taking. They're not like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have messaged her twice today because she seems like she responds so quickly every time. And then it becomes this whole thing. Like, no, nobody wants that. Right. They're like, oh, I love that there's clear boundaries. And I love that, like, it obviously felt good for her to, exceed those today. Great. I think that that's a very positive reaction to it. And I think it makes it feel like so good on both sides. I did this post a little while ago that seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And I was talking about how I like responded to a client when I was at Disney for the weekend with my kid. And what I was basically saying is like, do I feel pressure to like be on my phone when I'm at Disney with my child? Of course not. But honestly, he was sleeping in the stroller. I think my husband went to like go ride like a big kid ride. I can't remember what it was, like Tron or something, right? I'm like pushing him in a stroller around. Like, I'm happy to do this right now. Like, this is not a thing. Um, does it mean every time I'm away with my family I do that? No, it was just like circumstantially it made sense in that moment and it felt good to me. And that client had a big thing coming up, and I'm like happy to be there for that. But I think again, the energy is so different of like, if I felt like, oh my God, this client's having a thing, I'm at Disney, I need to tell my family, I have to like stop and take a break and go respond and like go sit down on a bench and da, 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 da. That would have felt fucking horrific. Ugh, I can't even like, no, right? But I think it's just so helpful to say, like, see how the action can be the same, but the experience of it can be so, so, so different. And I feel like that's what we have to watch is like, we don't need to look at our actions and go, is this action over delivery or over responsibility? Is this action over delivery or over responsibility? Because your brain's always going to be able to name that over delivery. It'll always be like, oh, it's just you delivering. It's just you showing up. But when you really look at the feel behind it and you're like, oh my God, that was so fucking stressful, probably over responsibility, right? If you're like, oh yeah, that like made sense. It felt really good to show up for them in that way. It felt good to like pour back into a client who is like such a great client who it fit to communicate with in that moment? Absolutely. So if there's like a takeaway from this, it's like the actions don't always look different. The feeling is different, right? And the actions can change all the time. Like some Sundays you respond, sometimes you don't. Like it has so little to do with the action and so much to do with the feeling, the experience of it, right? And so if you can watch for that more than you look at the action, you will find it so much easier to have those boundaries and to feel good in it. And if you don't make your feelings important, that's the whole problem. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we all know that. We all do that. If your feelings, if your desires, if your experience isn't being made important in this, that's the work for us, right? That's the work for us to do, is to go, oh, okay, why don't I include that? Why doesn't that seem to matter to me? Why am I always writing that off? Why am I making that so unimportant? That's the work. It's funny, I had a client the other day. I was talking to her, um, and she had decided to like resign and continue our work together. And we were kind of having that conversation. At the end of it, she said, like, I just really want to thank you for how you show up for yourself, because I know that pours into how I feel like you show up for me. And I'm so grateful for how you show up for yourself. And I'm so grateful for how you hold your boundaries, because I know that's why I feel so poured into. And it was so meaningful to hear that from her in that moment. It reminded me of like, she's very like in touch and in tune human. So she was able to like see that and say that and all of those things. But a lot of times, like someone's not even making that connection or vocalizing that to you, but that is what they're feeling. They're like, something about working with this person feels so good. Something about being in this person's container feels so good. Something about this feels really delicious. And maybe they aren't going to name it and say it in that exact way. But the thing isn't because you responded in 3 hours instead of 7. The thing is because of how it all feels, right? It feels like pouring into it. It feels like I'm good, so I can give more here. And I feel like that really does make a difference. So I think that that's it. I think that's kind of like all I wanted to give on that. Obviously, if y'all have more questions, let me know. I'm sure I could keep saying the same shit in a different way, because I'm very good at continuing to talk about something. But I mean, mostly I think those are the points. Like it's about how you feel. It's not always about what you do. How you feel translates in energetic, subconscious, unspeakable ways sometimes around how someone's showing up for you. Um, this is one thing I'll add, I often answer my clients at night, like quite a lot actually. But the reason is because I take off almost whole afternoons a lot of the time, basically whole afternoons most days. Occasionally I have a later one, but to be with my son, right? And so I'm with my son for more hours a day than our nanny is, really. And I only, only start at certain times in the morning because I always have slow mornings with him. And so for me, I have so much time during my day where like I'm getting to have this beautiful time with him and feeling really filled up by that. And so when I like answer at night, it's just because it works best for my schedule. It's not because I'm like, oh, I have to show up for someone right now. Oh, this is what over delivery looks like. It's just because I would rather do it then than the next, like have to worry about it the next morning. And because that's when I actually feel like really good. It's not because I'm like, oh, oh, I have to answer clients right now. Like, do you know what I mean? And so I think like it's just not about the high level what you're doing. I think excuse me, if I was coming to that from such another place where it's like I have to answer them then, and then I have to be on early tomorrow morning, and because if not, they're not going to be okay. That would be a horrific experience and would not feel good. So like it does like, but someone could easily be like, oh my God, she's responding at 9 o'clock at night. Whoa. Like that's a lot. Like that's obviously a ton of over responsibility. It doesn't have to mean that. It really just means whatever works for you and how it feels to you. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that is permission giving. You may not have to change any of the boundaries. It's just around how you feel around them and interact with them. So I hope that serves and helps. Reminder, before we jump, is that season 11 podcast applications are currently open. So if you're interested in that, make sure you apply by November 18th. So basically a week from today, you have another week to submit your application. If you'll have any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me, and I hope you have a beautiful Monday. Bye, guys.